We've dispensed with the title slide. It's not even showing the audience anymore. So now we go into a 7-question structure that takes us through 90%, 95% of the prepared part of a webinar. It's up to you if you're going to have a Q&A at the end. But there's a prepared section, and that's what most people have shown up to see. People don't register for webinars in order to attend a Q&A for the most part. Or to put it another way, people don't register and attend a webinar so they can hear strangers ask other strangers questions that are probably boring or inane, right? Q&As can be a wasteland in their own right. We'll deal with how to curate and handle a Q&A later in the course. But for now, we're going to go over the questions that the audience should ask themselves in order as we make it through our prepared content. Right? Our slides, our prepared talk, whatever it is we're going to do, our structured, interview even to some degree. So they're going to ask, what is that? And that's simply the cold open. Like, what is that? What are they showing me? What gap are they presenting to me? I may not have even known. I probably didn't know that this gap even existed. I didn't know that something that I've always thought was great or the right way to do something was actually wrong, or I didn't know that something that's an accepted good or best practice has been changed by some factor that I haven't heard of, environmental factor, legislative factor, competitive factor, new technology come along, whatever that is. Or I've never realized that what's good for most people is really not good for people in my industry. Like, I'm special, we're special, our industry special, company special, whatever. Those are the 3 main gaps we've talked about in another video. So their very first thought is, what is that? Simple as that. And that's how you open, right? You do not want your opening to be people waiting for you to get to any kind of point, because you're dealing, like we talked about when we mentioned wasting courtesy attention. We don't want the audience to sit around and wait for you to get onto it. First, you get onto it. And a lot of the stuff we talked about that people used to waste the courtesy attention period, you should never do, really. But if you're going to do it, don't do it up front. First, they should ask, what is that? You create a gap. The gap creates some sort of dissonance, some sort of interrupt, some sort of conflict or tension that the audience may have suspected existed even, but didn't have access to someone who's going to walk them through. Here's where we actually are. Here's the reality as you think it is. Here's the actual reality. And not as in, this is not like a salesy kind of thing. And I want to stress this. You're there to serve the audience, which means that right up until the moment the go live button was clicked and they can see and hear you, up until that moment, everything you've done is everything you've done is for the benefit of the audience. So we open with a gap, or cold open. Right, we show something, we show something else, we show that like there's air in between them, and there shouldn't be. And moving to the new reality is what the webinar is about. Later on, as we get through this, I'm going to talk about 3 concepts, but I want to introduce them here. They are the negative present, the positive future, and the negative future. Now, if the present, where we are right now, this time and space, as we deal with whatever business problem we're dealing with as an audience member, if the present wasn't negative, there's no reason to be on the webinar. It means that everything is solved. We know everything. We know we're not going to get surprised by anything. There's nothing else for us to learn or ingest or observe. The present's great. There's no problem, which means you don't need a vendor, because there's no problem for a vendor to solve. So the present is negative. And what the gap does is starkly highlight the negative present. Later on, we'll talk about the other 2 concepts, but very briefly, a positive future is where the customer wants to live. Simple as that. They're in a negative present. They want to move to a positive future. And then there's a couple of 1 or more spots later on where we talk about a potential negative future, which is, if you're in a negative present, I'm offering you a path out of that and a shortcut into the positive future. If you don't take it, let's just spend a little bit of time talking about like the negative future you could end up being in, which is even worse than the negative present that you're in today. But number 1 thing we start with, open with a gap, open with your cold open. What is that? The audience should be asking themselves, what is that?